This week, we will be reading from Parashat Ki Tisa. It is most well known for the incident of the golden calf. But tonight, I wanted to start with something a little more mundane. After instituting the half-shekel donation or tax to anoint the Mishkan, the portable tabernacle, its vessels, and the priests, Moses is instructed to single out Bitzalel and Oholiab to oversee the works involved in the creating of the Mishkan and all of its accoutrements. Bitzalel is described as being the Amaleh Oto Ruach Elohim b'chokma uvitvuna b'da'at uvechol malacha, of being endowed with the divine spirit of skill, ability, and knowledge in every kind of craft. With these skills in place, Bitzalel Oholiab shall immediately get to work on creating all of the furnishings, all of the vestments for the priests, just as I have commanded you, they shall do. But what follows is rather curious. Even though they have been given the sacred charge to create the most holy and sacred space for the entire Israelite community, nonetheless, as the Torah says shortly after, Ach et Shabtotai tishmoru, you must keep my Sabbaths. You shall keep the Sabbath, for it is holy for you. 6 days may work be done, but on the seventh day there shall be a Sabbath of complete rest. The Israelite people shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath, as throughout the ages a covenant for all time. Meaning, even in the most sacred of endeavors, like the building of the Mishkan, everyone, nonetheless, was not to work on Shabbat. As an aside, this is where the rabbis developed the notion of the 39 categories of work we are obligated not to do on Shabbat. According to them, it was everything involved in the building of the tabernacle. The list is quite extensive, but that is a sermon for another day. But more on Shabbat in a moment. Speaking of Shabbat, last Saturday I was looking so forward to a very rare weekend off the pulpit. I was looking forward to a little time to sleep in and perhaps a little rest and renewal. Of course, that all changed the moment I picked up my phone and realized that the United States and Israel had joined together in going to war against Iran, a country of nearly 90 million people, of whom only an estimated 20% of the population support the current government, but also a nation that has, for generations, engaged in state-sponsored terrorism through proxies like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Per Cantor's suggestion, I began to draft a statement which we later sent out to the congregation, and we began to think about the security arrangements for our upcoming communal Purim celebrations. And then, like so many, I began a deep dive into the world of doom scrolling. Aside from the horrors and celebrations of war, I found there were two very concerning themes that were rapidly emerging. The first was that our president, who has over and over again said that he is the president of peace and would never get us into another foreign entanglement, especially in the Middle East, must somehow have been coerced into this war, meaning Israel made him do it. And the second, just as alarming, was that some entity here in the United States, acting against U.S. interests, somehow forced this war. And of course, who was that? The Jews. These two conspiracy theories, both from the right and the left, somehow collided into forming a horseshoe of anti-Semitism. Of course, both of these are deeply problematic both on a practical level, but also they set us up, especially if things go horribly wrong. As Yair Rosenberg wrote for The Atlantic, the shifting explanations for Trump's war and the alleged imminent threat that prompted it suggest poor planning and internal confusion about the president's motives. They are also a smokescreen. Fundamentally, a war ordered by the most powerful man in the world, commanding the most advanced military in the world, is the responsibility of the man who ordered it. Trump is a two-term president with agency, and he has long telegraphed and demonstrated his eagerness to use military force around the world, and in particular in Iran. All the way back in 1980, in an NBC interview, a young Trump about ongoing Iran hostage crisis, he did not hold back. That this country sits back and allows a country such as Iran to hold their hostages, to my way of thinking, is a horror, and I don't think they do it with other countries, he said. When the interviewer asked if that meant you're advocating that we should have gone in there with troops, Trump replied, I absolutely feel that, yes. Adding that America had done so, I think right now we'd be a rich oil nation. Trump's officials and allies have fumbled about to find an imminent threat to justify the president's decision to strike Iran, but the real impetus for such action was Trump's imperial approach to American power, which was decades in the making. The president specializes in exploiting the weaknesses of his opponents, having watched Israel decimate Iran's proxy armies and air defenses over the past few years. He sought to capitalize on the regime's moment of maximum vulnerability. Other countries, most notably Israel and Saudi Arabia, potentially stand to benefit from this war. But the decision to start it was his alone, and no amount of spin from his surrogates should obscure this fact. Bibi Netanyahu may believe he is the only person in all of Israel who can save them from external threats, which is in part why he's so fastidiously held to his position of power for around 20 years. But by any clear analysis, this is Trump's war, not Israel's. With regards to the other conspiracy theory, like has happened throughout our history, someone uncovers a kernel of Jewish life and it quickly explodes to feed the feverish, demented minds of anti-Semites. Recently, there have been some on social media suddenly discovering the Babylonian Talmud, an esoteric work of Jewish argumentation and rabbinic fan fiction spanning nearly 2 million words. Most of it is in Aramaic, and it takes years, if not a lifetime, to study and understand. Nonetheless, the University of Google has made far too many experts in the Talmud. But now, a new entity has been called out as the reason for this war: Chabad. As Andrew Lapin, writing for the Detroit Jewish News, notes, Tucker Carlson is spreading a new anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. You may know people who give money to Chabad or run Chabad. Super nice people engage in all kinds of charitable activities. Carlson told his top followers about the global Hasidic sect in a video he posted this past Thursday. But what is Chabad exactly? He went on to claim Chabad has been pushing a pretty subtle way, unless you look carefully, for the reconstruction of the Third Temple. The fabled structure that, according to ancient Jewish teachings, heralds the arrival of the Messiah. Building the temple, he says later in the video, is considered so esoteric and weird and crypto-historical and religious and kind of culty. What's Chabad? No one ever mentions it. He accused Chabad of sitting at the center of what he said was an effort to wage a holy war in the Middle East aimed at destroying the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Muslim holy sites built on the remnants of the ancient Jewish temple known as the Temple Mount, in order to clear the way for its reconstruction. As evidence, he cited a video posted by an Israeli soldier who showed up both a patch showing a crown and the Hebrew word for Messiah and the Third Temple patch that he had affixed to his uniform. Of course, Carlson starts with, what is Chabad? No one ever mentions it. Of course we do. For anyone living in the Jewish world, Chabad is a well-known entity whose mission is primarily focused on getting Jews to perform more mitzvot. This is why they encourage the lighting of Shabbat candles, for men to lay tefillin, to take up the lulav and etrog on Sukkot, and to light the Chanukiah, which I joined with them in doing at our state capitol in Lincoln this past December. It is not to say Chabad is a perfect organization, but they are certainly not the drivers of this war with Iran. Both of these accusations, when you just dig between the surface, are quite ridiculous, which means, of course, they have legs and represent a clear and present danger to us all. So to borrow from John Oliver, what can we do about it? Here is where I think Shabbat plays an important role. As I was reminded when I began doom scrolling, it becomes an all-consuming endeavor that can lead to the deep, dark crevasses of the internet. As a reminder, social media wants to keep you angry because the more angry you are, the more engaged you are with their algorithm and the more advertising they can sell you. If Shabbat is a space for time and spiritual rest and renewal, so too it can be a model for how to help ease the anxiety and fear we're all feeling as well. By not engaging, we can find the space to breathe and be present with the lives in front of us and not go so consumed by all of that which we cannot control. More than that, Shabbat is also the model, according to tradition, for the Olam Haba, the world to come, where we are all at peace, where we shall dwell under our own vine and fig trees, and none are afraid. This is the kind of peace that can only come from refraining from living in a duality that the world keeps wanting to force us into. A duality of right and wrong, a duality of black and white, a duality of moral certainty and mastery of all knowledge. In a way, moral certainty is the opposite of Shabbat, because it has the potential to enact the worst instincts within all of us. If we are so morally certain, that means anyone who disagrees with us is not only evil, but potentially less than human. You may see where I'm going with this. These are certainly topics we have spoken about before from this pulpit. So in many ways, tonight is a friendly reminder to engage in the opposite of certainty, which isn't uncertainty, by the way. No, the opposite of certainty is curiosity. The challenge, especially with social media, is it gives anyone and everyone a microphone, and those who are most controversial are often elevated to a status that is often undeserved and unwarranted. And the louder they are, the louder they shout down those who are unsure, those who want to learn, those who are curious. Believe it or not, it is okay to have mixed emotions about what has transpired over this past week. We know that the only certainty is that war brings about is death and destruction. We know that evil people who have engaged in evil acts are dead. Nonetheless, we do not celebrate their deaths, for we also know that many innocent people have and will die. We know that good men and women are putting their lives on the line every day, and we know that our country, if not the entire world, is conflicted about this conflict. We also know that this is not just a war between the United States, Israel, and Iran. It is a war between Iran and the Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia. It is a war between Iran and Turkey over hegemony over the region. We know it is a proxy war between the United States, Russia, and China. We know that war is almost never simple, and the implications and outcomes can last for generations, even once the fighting has ceased. As Rabbi Asher Knight wrote, and I've seen enough to distrust the seduction of a clean ending. History has taught us that removal of a tyrant is not the same thing as the arrival of peace and justice. The fall of a ruler can open the door to freedom. It can also open the door to chaos. It can fracture society. It can unleash forces that were contained not by virtue, but elements and ideas we did not understand. It can lead to unintended wars, unintended alliances, unintended suffering. So I find myself holding two truths at once. First, the knowledge that regimes that sponsor terror and threaten annihilation cannot be treated as abstract irritants. Words matter, weapons matter, funding matters. When a government invests decades in destabilization and destruction, it should not surprise anyone that confrontation eventually comes. And second, war is not a surgical instrument. It is really blunt. It is really unpredictable. It rarely, maybe never ends where its authors imagine. It carries consequences far beyond the first strike. On this Shabbat, as we are reminded of one of the most important mitzvot, to observe Shabbat, may we also create the space for ourselves to learn and to understand, to let go of our certainty and to engage in curiosity, to not fall down the rabbit holes of conspiracy theories, and instead be able to see the larger view of all of the distinct narratives at play. Because right now, the world is ready to once again blame us for this war. And whether you are for or against, or even conflicted on how you feel about it, putting a target on our backs only heightens the dangers to us and does nothing to answer any of the larger underlying questions. We may not have the answers in this moment, but we know for sure that those who claim to have them have their own agendas. And it is them who are actively tearing down the walls of the Mishkan instead of building it up. Better for us to commit to the building of a space in time for Shabbat, a space for curiosity, a space to learn, so that we can act in ways that are both sacred and holy and work towards a day of peace. That though it has been promised, we will continue to wait its arrival. And until it does arrive, we pray for the men and women whose lives put their lives on the line every day to protect our nation, to protect Israel. We pray for the civilians, those innocent whose lives are very much in danger. And we pray for a speedy and swift end to this conflict. And we pray for the rise, perhaps, God willing, of an Iran that represents the history of the country, of a people who are curious themselves, who wish to engage in the modern world, who wish to lay down the swords of hostility and embrace the world with notions of peace and of possibility. Shabbat Shalom.